Today, Embark, the developers of the finals, finally put out real gameplay footage of their game, Arc Raiders. It's an upcoming PvPvE extraction survival shooter game. Now, I know a lot of people cringe when they hear that term, but I've always been of the belief that this genre deserves some love and some really good games because the genre itself has a lot of potential. So Arc Raiders itself is quite promising to me because it does come from the same developers who made the finals. Now, it's two separate dev teams within the studio itself working on the game, but with me having experience playing it myself, I can definitely confirm there are some similarities between the two when it comes to their design choices and the overall flow of gameplay. Now, besides that, the actual gameplay experience of Arc Raiders is completely different from the finals, and you could easily be convinced it's from a completely different studio. That being said, I think the game is definitely got this level of polish that a lot of games are missing these days, and it's going to need that because Arc Raiders will have a $40 price tag when it releases sometime in 2025. No full release date yet, but yes, it's not free to play anymore. They are putting a $40 price tag on it so that they can get the income they need to sort of have a more traditional release schedule. They will, of course, have post-launch content, but they're not going to go down the route of it being a free-to-play live service game. That means they can make a solid product first and then get it out to the masses instead of releasing it in a who knows what state and being obliged to make it better over time. It's going to be a great game from the get-go. That's their plan, and that's why they've been very careful with showing any kind of gameplay. This is their first time showing gameplay, and they are really cautious with, firstly, how the audience perceives it, and secondly, how the playtesters feel about it. They're making sure the systems are right before they show it to the world too much, and honestly, I can see why. There's a lot of ways an extraction shooter game could go terribly wrong. Sometimes developers have made extraction shooters that are just way too casual, leaning in favor of creating an experience that won't annoy too many players in fear that they may leave the game forever. For example, Battlefield 2042 tried to make Hazard Zone. It was really boring. When you have an extraction shooter that doesn't have risk, it's going to be boring. You're not going to feel tense. You're not going to feel scared when you get into a fight, which is part of the amazing experience that extraction shooters have. There needs to be risk and there needs to be reward. And then on the other side of things, sometimes developers make such an extreme extraction shooter game that whilst it can be very successful for a smaller audience, it's harder to bring the game to the masses. Some examples could be Escape from Tarkov or Arena Breakout. Both of these games, in my opinion, are great extraction shooters, but they are pretty hardcore and very unforgiving, which makes it hard for them to be successful, at least in the scale of perhaps Battle Royale games. So there's this middle ground that needs to be found when it comes to extraction shooters. And I don't know how Arc Raiders are going to develop things. It's still very early days in the playtest. And I think a lot of systems and content is going to still evolve over time before we get to the full launch. But I will say that there is risk and there is reward in Arc Raiders. If you die, you lose all of the items on you. And very much the same if you kill another player, you can take whatever items they have on them. Now, Arc Raiders is still in early development, so I can't really go into too many details about how specific systems work, but it's very much the same as any particular extraction shooter in terms of gameplay loop. You have quests to do on the main menu, you then go into a specific map, you go and do your quest. On the way, you may come across PvE elements, and I'll talk about that in a second. The PvE in this game is pretty awesome, or potential PvP encounters, and I think the PvP is what keeps games like this alive. I know that Arc Raiders was originally going to be a PvE game, but PvP helps keep games like this going. If it didn't have PvP, some of the atmosphere would definitely be lost. So to me, I definitely see Embark getting the balance right when it comes to perfecting that risk versus reward feeling for Arc Raiders. And, you know, it's going to feel good. It's going to feel like you're putting in time and the runs you do are meaningful. Now, let's talk about actual pure gameplay here. The PvE elements, the gun mechanics, the movement, and all that stuff. Once again, I do want to say that it's still very early days, and a lot of changes could come when it finally releases, so this is all based on my personal experience in the playtest. I will say that nothing quite feels like this game. They've done something very different with the gun mechanics and the feel of shooting and PvP in this game, and it's really quite something unique and something special. And when you play it first, you may be kind of wondering what is going on, how is it playing out, but once you get a feel for it, it's pretty awesome. One thing that the trailer or the gameplay footage you're seeing right now fails to capture is the very interesting movement style that this game has. You have mantling, climbing, sliding, and you can change shoulder angles. So PvP encounters really are all about using movement and the terrain around you to get the right angles on players, as opposed to like jumping around in people's faces with crazy movement like you may do in the finals. It's very different. It has a very different flow of gameplay, but once you get into the flow of things, it feels pretty awesome. And that's really amplified by the fact that this game has really awesome sound design. When you shoot people, it feels like you're shooting them. The sound effects are amazing. When you knock a player, it has really cool sound effects. And the visuals are also tied into that really well, too. There isn't like health bars on enemy players. There isn't a very easy way to tell exactly how much health a player has. But you'll start to gradually learn that different sound effects and visual effects indicate how much health or damage you're doing to players, and whether you're breaking their armor or you're dealing damage to their pure health, and it's really, really cool. These same sound designs and visual effects are applied to the PvE element as well. There isn't just AI NPC humans, there's all sorts of crazy robotic creatures, some floating drones, some more complex walker type things, some really unique robots. They all have their different attack patterns and designs, and they all have different weak points and indicators for where you should be shooting them. Every single engagement with one of these different PvE encounters is going to feel different because they all have their unique experience. They all have their best way to take them down, and they all have different parts and gear that you may be able to get from them. So with all of these gameplay systems in place, some pretty awesome PvE and some fun and engaging PvP, I do think Arc Raiders will be a pretty awesome extraction shooter experience. It's probably not going to be the next big, huge hit that's going to overtake Apex Legends and Fortnite and all that, but it's going to be a pretty good game, standing on its own 2 feet as a unique experience that really does feel like its own thing. Like, it's not just copying the milsim formula to create an extraction shooter. It's not really copying anything. Like, it feels like a very unique new experience, and I am quite excited, actually. I'm really looking forward to this, and I think Embark as a dev team know how to make good games, know how to balance games, and make sure things are always fun and exciting to jump in. Another thing I really want to reiterate with Arc Raiders is, yeah, it does really look very beautiful, and the sound design in this game is so awesome. I wish you could experience how it feels to just walk around the world and hear all this stuff going on. Like, if a player starts PvEing, you're going to know it. If a team starts shooting each other, you're going to know it. You're going to know through different sound design cues, like what's going on around you, and the sound effects really play such an important role in everything, and it's a really unique experience just from the way that they've designed the sound and visuals. It's coming out sometime in 2025. You can wishlist it now on Steam, and I'd recommend doing so if you want to support the devs, because it will help them get a nice big healthy launch when the game does go live. But either way, I'll be making more Arc Raiders content as more news comes out, so stay tuned for that, and let me know what you think so far of this footage, and I'll see you in the comments. Cheerio!